All right, let's keep going through the Venus sequence. We're about to talk about the lines of our EQ. And remember, every different sequence in the gene keys has a path of challenge, breakthrough, and core stability. So as we're moving from the IQ to the EQ, which is again through our intellectual and emotional defenses, that's our pathway of challenge. I'm Molly, you're watching Mirror Readings. Let's get into it. Real quick, what is EQ, our emotional quotient? Emotional intelligence has to do with three main things: our ability to listen, communicate clearly, and our willingness to take responsibility for our own feelings. All right, so once again, our lines are what bring us out of our shadow frequency and into our gifts. Our shadows block our manifestations and our gifts magnetize them. Our EQ corresponds with some type of imprint we got from age 7 to 14 years old. This is when we either learned emotional boundaries or, for most of us, did not learn them. Spoiler, a lack of emotional intelligence typically results in blaming others while avoiding all responsibility for ourselves in any emotional interaction. So let's look at these lines and see how we're going to get out of that and move from the shadow to our gifts. Line 1 is self-esteem and self-sabotage. As you know, if you've watched my previous videos, line 1s need a certain amount of alone time that's usually greater than the other lines in order to figure out what's going on with them and develop. So self-sabotage can express as stubbornly insisting on a course of action that you know is only going to lead to more suffering, but you do it anyway. And some forms of self-sabotage can be very subtle. Like, we can feel so righteous in our course of action and yet totally be undermining ourselves and our self-esteem. But once line 1s are aware of these patterns and see how they're bringing suffering to themselves and others, hopefully they can just be aware of how foolish this pattern is. Nobody wants this, and we all need to have a sense of humor about ourselves to be able to get out of these shadow patterns and into our gifts. So if you have a line 1, you have to cultivate self-esteem kind of manually. You might have to remind yourself all the time that this is your natural state. Every day, 108 times a day, I say to myself, I love and trust myself in life. I love and trust myself in life. And if that's what you have to do, figure out a mantra and reprogram yourself. Line 2 is courtesy and aggression. Line 2s, y'all can make people feel great about themselves or fucking terrible, depending on what kind of mood you're in. So, line 2 in low frequency, it comes out very aggressive. You guys are not able to control your anger. But in the highest frequency, this passion that you have, it can be expressed in a courteous way. And courtesy is maybe not what you think. It's not a restrained delicacy. It's not politeness. It's directing your big emotions in a thoughtful way. Line 2s, as best you can, feel your feelings and process them before you express them. This is especially important for you so you don't accidentally fall into the shadow of blame. Line 3, tricky as always. You guys have sympathy and apathy. So the reason for apathy is that line 3s are actually so sensitive that they can get in an emotional loop that never breaks. So they basically turn on apathy to stop that from happening. And at that shadow frequency, they invite a lot of suspicion because subconsciously people feel that you're apathetic. But the other side of this coin is that you have a vast capacity for sympathy that is not overindulgent. And how to access that, that's your job. There are lots of ways to get this job done, but the Venus sequence is all about opening our heart, so you're gonna have to get vulnerable. And for line 3s, if you're stuck in that shadow of apathy, you might have to use your imagination to try to figure out like what you might be feeling vulnerable about just from a logical perspective. But no matter what, you can trust yourself to do this because once you access that sympathy, which is going to bring you into the gift of your EQ, you know that you're not going to get lost in the sauce. You're going to break the loop that occurs at lower frequencies when you're low-key pretending to be apathetic because you actually feel so much. Love is complicated. Emotions are complicated. But we're out here. We're doing it. Let's keep going. Line 4, kindness and meanness. Oof. Okay, now remember, our EQ is shaped during puberty sometimes. So usually between ages 7 and 14, we have some kind of imprint that causes this pattern to either hold us in shadow or to more easily bring us into our gift. Meanness typically develops from feeling rejected by another. But remember that kindness is the other side of meanness. And true kindness is often hidden. Out of consideration for another person's feelings, you might choose not to say something that you know would hurt them. There's a fine line between being honest and being compassionate. If we're going to say something, let's ask ourselves, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Hopefully, it meets all 3 qualifications before it comes out of our mouth. Cultivating positive self-esteem will stabilize this gift, because when we feel good about ourselves, we're kind. When we feel shitty about ourselves, we get mean. So that's true for any of the lines, but it's especially true for line 4. If you've watched any of my other videos on the lines, you know that the 5th line always has a lot of horsepower. So yet again, line 5s are either respect or disrespect. And what imbues the 5th line with its special quality as a leader is the same thing that can make it very destructive. Line 5s have to be aware of how much power y'all have over other people. 5th lines, if they're not actively working on their shadows, are at risk of a big fall from grace. And what that means is that they might be engaged in disrespect at a more subtle level than just disrespecting their partner or whoever they're in connection with. It might be a lack of graciousness or cynicism or impatience, whatever it is. But if they're not actively working to get out of the shadow pattern of their EQ, life is going to serve up some kind of catastrophe that's going to humble them. So watch out for that. You definitely want to fix this yourself if you're in the shadow of your EQ. And don't forget that cultivating respect starts with respect for ourselves. If we're disrespecting ourselves, and this can show up a million different ways, we can be acting like emotional martyrs or not taking care of our health, whatever. We're not going to be able to cultivate respect in our relationships. But because 5th lines are so powerful, once they do start cultivating that self-respect, they're automatically going to stabilize in their gift frequency and call more respectful relationships into their lives. And finally, 6th line EQs, we are the emotional pioneers of a new type of relationship dynamic. Yes, it's true. I'm a 6th line, and I definitely feel this book when it says that I have to be the most patient of all of the lines because I will endure many emotional trials in my life in order to be able to stabilize. 6 lines are on a voyage of emotional discovery, and we have a lot of experience that we have to have before we stabilize in our gift. Also, yeah. Line 6 is reverence or alienation. So, alienation? I think I said that right. Anyway, we either alienate ourselves because we feel too much and we get too impatient, so we get stuck in that shadow frequency, which for me is immaturity. I have gene key 53 in my life's work and my EQ, okay? So my big karma on this plane is getting out of immaturity through expansion and into superabundance. Can't wait for that one. But I digress. So I'm either alienating myself by getting overwhelmed with having so many different emotional experiences in my life, or I'm showing reverence to those emotional experiences. And reverence is different from respect. Respect has more to do with sharing power, and reverence is much more sacred. Sometimes the 6th line may feel as though it's traveling through a tunnel, and at certain times you emerge and are flooded by the light. Yeah. The whole process has a purpose. It can't be controlled. We have to surrender to it and embrace it and show that reverence. Treat every emotional experience as sacred. Bless you, Rex. Just a little snuggly and a little sneezy today. Okay. Hey, I'm Molly. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to get a reading from me, please visit me, mirrorreadings.com. If you have any questions, email me, mirrorreadings@gmail.com, and subscribe to this channel to save 15% on all my offerings. Till next time.